In the mansion on Rosehill Avenue, everyone thought Clara was the luckiest poor girl alive. Her rich stepmother dressed her in silk, filled her room with toys, and let her sleep through lessons, chores, and dreams. But the kindness was poison. Maribel didn't spoil Clara out of love. She wanted to make her useless, helpless, and easy to throw away when the time came. Then one stormy afternoon, Clara saw a little girl trapped near a rushing road while a black billionaire's car screeched too late. Without thinking, Clara ran, saved the child, and nearly lost everything. The billionaire's daughter, trembling in Clara's arms, whispered something no one expected. "She's the one Daddy has been looking for." Within hours, the mansion's golden doors slammed shut behind Clara. Her stepmother turned pale. The billionaire demanded answers, and the child revealed a secret buried for years, a secret that connected Clara to wealth, betrayal, and a family she never knew existed. By sunset, the spoiled poor girl was homeless. But by morning, everyone who had underestimated her would learn the truth. Clara was never useless at all. For most of her life, Clara Hale had been told she was delicate. "Don't lift that, darling," Maribel would say if Clara reached for a tray. "Don't trouble your little head," she would murmur when Clara asked about bills, servants, or the strange men who came to the mansion carrying folders. "Lessons are so dull," she would sigh, taking books from Clara's hands and replacing them with ribbons, scented soaps, music boxes, and porcelain dolls. "You were born for comfort, my poor sweet child. Let others do the thinking." At first, Clara had believed her. Why wouldn't she? When she arrived at Rosehill Mansion at 8 years old, she owned one faded dress, one pair of worn shoes, and a small silver locket shaped like a crescent moon. Her father, Thomas Hale, had married Maribel only 6 months earlier, saying she was a woman with means who could give Clara the life her late mother would have wanted. Then Thomas died suddenly of a fever the winter Clara turned 9, and Maribel changed. Not in public, never in public. In public, she was perfect. She wore pale gloves to church and dabbed her eyes with lace handkerchiefs. She told everyone how much she adored dear little Clara. She donated to orphanages, smiled at widows, and never forgot a birthday. Inside Rosehill, her kindness had hooks. Clara was never beaten, never starved, never locked in a dark room like the poor heroines in the novels she secretly read. Her prison was softer than that. It had velvet curtains, satin sheets, sugared cakes, and compliments that sounded sweet until they sank into her skin. "You are too pretty for arithmetic. Your hands are too soft for work. You are lucky I am here. Without me, what would become of you?" When tutors came, Maribel dismissed them after a few weeks. One was too strict, another too dull, another too interested in family matters. When Clara asked to attend school like other girls, Maribel laughed and tapped her cheek. "School with your nerves, darling, you would be eaten alive." So Clara stayed in the mansion. She grew tall and quiet. Her dresses became more expensive, her world became smaller, and people began to talk. "That poor girl," they whispered, "spoiled beyond repair. She cannot cook, cannot keep accounts, cannot even order a carriage." Maribel heard the gossip and smiled. Her own daughter, Vivienne, who was 2 years older than Clara, had no such restrictions. Vivienne was sent to the best academy in the city. She learned French, music, debate, and business etiquette. She rode horses, attended charity boards, and sat beside Maribel at dinners, listening as men discussed investments. Clara sat at the far end of the table and was handed desserts. "Have another slice, sweetheart," Maribel would say whenever Clara tried to follow the conversation. "Thinking makes you pale." But Clara was not foolish. She was lonely, and she had been trained to doubt herself, but loneliness had made her observant. She noticed things because noticing was all she was allowed to do. She noticed that Maribel never let anyone touch the locked drawer in the blue study. She noticed that bills came in Thomas Hale's name long after he was gone. She noticed that every year, near Clara's birthday, a letter arrived with no return address, and Maribel burned it in the fireplace without opening it. She noticed that the housekeeper, Mrs. Finch, always looked away when Clara asked about her mother. And she noticed the way Maribel stared at the silver crescent locket. "Ugly little thing," Maribel said once when Clara was 13, "you should let me replace it." "It was my mother," Clara replied, closing her fingers around it. "Your mother," Maribel said, and something sharp flashed behind her eyes, "left very little worth keeping." Clara never asked again. But at night, when the mansion settled and the hallway clocks ticked like tiny warnings, Clara slipped from bed, lit a candle, and taught herself from old books hidden in the nursery cupboard. She read grammar, geography, history, and arithmetic. She copied words until her hand cramped. She practiced sums on scrap paper. When she did not understand something, she asked the cook's son, Peter, who worked in the stables and attended evening school. Peter never laughed at her. "You're not useless," he told her once, leaning against a stall door while a chestnut mare snorted beside him. "You just haven't been allowed to practice being useful." That sentence stayed with Clara for years. You just haven't been allowed. It was the first key she ever held. The second key came on the stormy afternoon that changed everything. The rain began before noon, tapping against the greenhouse glass, then growing into a grey sheet that blurred the gardens. Maribel had gone into town with Vivienne to fit gowns for a charity gala. Clara had been left behind, as usual. "You would only be bored," Maribel had said. "Stay warm, eat something nice." But Clara was restless. The storm made the mansion feel too tight, too full of old whispers. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and slipped out through the side door, crossing the garden path toward the old gate at the edge of Rosehill Avenue. Beyond the gate, the road curved sharply downhill. In dry weather it was harmless. In rain, water rushed along its edges like a shallow stream. Clara heard the scream before she saw the child. A little girl in a yellow raincoat stood frozen near the bend, one boot stuck in the muddy gutter, her small hands clutching a red umbrella turned inside out by the wind. A black car came around the corner too fast, its tires hissing against the wet road. For 1 second, Clara did not think, she moved. She shoved the gate open, ran into the road, and reached the child just as the car swerved. Clara pulled the little girl backward with all her strength. They tumbled onto the grass beyond the curb as the car stopped with a harsh sound and a spray of rainwater. The driver leaped out first, pale and shaking. Then the back door opened. A man stepped into the rain. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit, with silver beginning at his temples and fear written plainly across his face. Not anger, not arrogance, fear. "Lily," he called. The little girl clung to Clara, sobbing into her shoulder. "I'm all right, Daddy," she cried. "She saved me." The man's knees seemed to weaken. He crossed the distance quickly, but stopped when Lily would not let go of Clara. "Thank you," he said, voice rough. "Miss." "Clara," she answered, breathless. "Clara Hale." The name struck him strangely. "Hale," he repeated. Before Clara could answer, Lily lifted her head. Her eyes were wide, not only with fright, but with recognition. She stared at Clara's throat, where the crescent locket had slipped free of her dress. "Daddy," Lily whispered, "look." The man's gaze dropped to the locket. The rain fell harder. His face changed. "Where did you get that?" he asked. Clara touched it. "It belonged to my mother." "What was your mother's name?" Clara hesitated. Maribel disliked questions about her mother. Even now, on a road in the rain, Clara felt that old warning close around her. "Elena," she said softly. "Elena Hale. Before that, I don't know." The man drew in a breath. Lily's small voice trembled with urgency. "She's the one, Daddy, from the picture in your study, the moon necklace, the girl you said got lost." Clara stared at her. The man looked as if the world had tilted beneath his feet. "My name is Nathaniel Vale," he said, "and I have been searching for Elena Vale's daughter for 10 years. Clara did not understand. She might have asked, a dozen questions. But at that moment, the front doors of Rosehill Mansion opened and Maribel appeared under a black umbrella, Vivienne behind her. Someone must have seen the stopped car from the window. Maribel's face was irritated at first. Then she saw Nathaniel Vale. Then she saw his eyes on Clara's locket. All the color drained from her face. "Clara," Maribel called too brightly, "come inside at once, you are soaked." Nathaniel turned toward her. "Mrs. Maribel Hale." "Who is asking?" "Nathaniel Vale." Vivienne gasped. Even Clara, sheltered as she was, knew the name. Vale Industries built ships, funded hospitals, bought half the city's old factories, and turned them into shining towers. Nathaniel Vale was not merely rich. He was the kind of rich people spoke about carefully, as though money itself had ears. Maribel recovered quickly. "Mr. Vale, what a surprise. I hope there has been no trouble. Your stepdaughter saved my child's life." "How noble of her," Maribel said, though she barely glanced at Clara. "But she is fragile. Excitement overwhelms her. Come, Clara." Nathaniel did not move. "I need to speak with you." "Another time." "Now." The word was quiet, but it carried more force than shouting. Maribel's smile thinned. "About what?" "About Elena Vale." The umbrella in Maribel's hand trembled. Clara saw it. So did Nathaniel. "So you know the name," he said. "I know many names," Maribel replied, "and I do not discuss private family matters in the rain." "Then we will discuss them inside." Maribel looked at Clara then, and for the first time in years, Clara saw not pity, not false sweetness, but fear. "Clara," Maribel said, "go to your room." Nathaniel stepped forward. "She stays. She is my ward. She may be my niece." The words struck Clara harder than the rain. "My niece." Lily still held Clara's hand. The child's palm was small and warm. Maribel's mouth opened, then closed. Vivienne looked between them, confusion and alarm flickering across her perfect face. At last Maribel said, "Inside." They entered Rosehill through the grand hall, leaving rainwater on the marble floor. Mrs. Finch appeared with towels, but Maribel snapped at her to leave. Nathaniel sent his driver to take Lily to the car with a blanket, but Lily refused. "No," she said, planting herself beside Clara, "I'm staying." Nathaniel looked as though he wanted to argue, then thought better of it. In the blue drawing room, Maribel stood by the fireplace, her posture stiff. "This is absurd," she said. "Clara's mother was Elena Hale, a seamstress, poor, sickly, and unfortunately sentimental. She was no Vale." Nathaniel removed a worn photograph from his wallet. Clara leaned forward. The woman in the picture was young and smiling, her dark hair pinned loosely, a crescent locket at her throat. Clara had seen no photographs of her mother before. Maribel had always claimed they were lost. But Clara knew that face. Not because she remembered it clearly. She had been too small when her mother died. She knew it because it looked like her own. "That is my sister," Nathaniel said. "Elena Vale. She left home after a quarrel with our father. By the time I learned where she had gone, she had vanished. I found records of her marriage to Thomas Hale, then nothing. Every letter I sent was returned or unanswered." Maribel laughed once. "How touching and very convenient." Nathaniel's eyes hardened. "I sent letters to this house every year." Clara looked at Maribel. "The letters in the fire." "Every year near her birthday." "No letters arrived," Maribel said. That was the first lie Clara could prove with memory, though not yet with paper. Nathaniel turned to Clara. "Did she ever give you a letter from me?" Clara's voice came out small. "No." "Because none arrived," Maribel said sharply. Clara flinched. Nathaniel noticed. "Do not speak over her," he said. Maribel's face tightened with rage, not the loud kind, the polished kind. "Mr. Vale, you arrive at my home, accuse me of hiding letters, frighten my stepdaughter with fantasies, and expect me to tolerate it because you are wealthy. I expect the truth. The truth is that Clara is unstable. She has always been fanciful. We have sheltered her because she cannot manage ordinary life. Ask anyone. She cannot work, cannot study, cannot even travel alone. She is a sweet burden, but a burden still. Clara felt every word, like a door closing. A sweet burden. Beside her, Lily squeezed her hand. Nathaniel looked at Clara, not with pity, but with attention. Is that true? Clara thought of the hidden books, the sums, Peter's patient explanations, the letters burned, the way Maribel called thinking dangerous. She wanted to say no, but years of training rose in her throat. I don't know, she whispered. Maribel smiled, victorious. Nathaniel's expression softened, but before he could speak, Maribel crossed the room and grabbed Clara by the wrist. That is enough, Clara, upstairs. Nathaniel stood, take your hand off her. Maribel released Clara as though burned. Very well, she said. If you are all so determined to turn my home into a theater, I will end the performance. She walked to the hall and rang the bell. Mrs. Finch appeared again, nervous. Bring Clara's old carpet bag, Maribel ordered. Mrs. Finch stared. Madam. Do it. Clara rose slowly. Maribel. Maribel turned on her. The mask was gone. You want your rich uncle, your grand lost family? Go find them. But you will not sleep another night under my roof while strangers insult me in my own house. Vivienne whispered, Mother, surely. Silence. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Mrs. Hale, think carefully. I have thought carefully for 10 years, Maribel snapped. I fed her, clothed her, endured her uselessness, and this is my thanks. She stands there staring at me as if I am a villain because some man waves an old photograph. Clara could barely breathe. Nathaniel said, Clara will come with me. No, Clara said quickly. Everyone turned. She did not know why she said it. Maybe because fear made everything strange. Maybe because Nathaniel was still a stranger, even if his eyes held pieces of her mother's face. Maybe because accepting his help, while Maribel watched, felt like stepping from one cage into another before knowing whether it had bars. I need, Clara swallowed, I need air. Maribel laughed coldly. You need more than air. Mrs. Finch returned with the old carpet bag. It was the same one Clara had carried into Rosehill at 8 years old. Maribel took it and shoved it into Clara's hands. Your dresses belong to me, she said. The jewels belong to me. The room belongs to me. Take what you came with. Clara looked down. The carpet bag was empty. Nathaniel moved toward her. Clara, please, you do not have to. But Maribel opened the front doors. Rain blew into the hall. Something inside Clara went very still. For years Maribel had told her she would be nothing without Rosehill. Nothing without silk dresses, sugared cakes, soft beds, and the protection of a woman who smiled in public and sharpened knives in private. Clara wanted to know if that was true. She lifted her chin, stepped through the open doors, and walked into the rain. Clara, Lily cried. Clara did not look back. If she had, she might have run into Nathaniel's arms and let him rescue her completely. Later, she would wonder if pride had made her foolish, but that night, pride was the only thing she owned. She walked until Rosehill Avenue ended. Her slippers soaked through, her dress clung to her knees. The carpet bag bumped emptily against her leg. At the edge of the city, the rain softened to mist. Street lamps glowed in puddles. People hurried past with umbrellas, collars raised, eyes forward. No one looked twice at a wet girl carrying an empty bag. For the first time, Clara understood what homelessness meant. It was not only having no bed, it was becoming invisible while surrounded by people. She found shelter beneath the awning of a closed bakery. The smell of bread lingered behind the locked door, warm and unreachable. She sat on the stone step, and pressed her hand around the crescent locket. Elena Vale. Nathaniel Vale. My niece. The words circled her mind. After an hour, a familiar voice said, I thought I'd find you somewhere stubborn. Clara looked up. Mrs. Finch stood before her, holding a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Mrs. Finch. The housekeeper's grey hair had escaped its pins, and her cheeks were flushed from walking quickly. I cannot stay long. Madam thinks I went to visit my sister. You shouldn't have come. Probably not. Mrs. Finch sat beside her with a sigh, but I have done too many things I shouldn't, and not enough things I should. She handed Clara the bundle. Inside were dry stockings, a plain wool dress, a loaf of bread, a little cheese, and 3 folded banknotes. Clara's eyes filled. I can't take this. You can, and you will. Maribel will dismiss you. She already did. Clara stared at her. Mrs. Finch looked at the bakery window rather than Clara's face. I told her a woman who throws a girl into the rain has no right to call herself a mother. She did not appreciate the observation. A small laugh escaped Clara, breaking into a sob halfway through. Mrs. Finch put an arm around her shoulders. Listen to me. Mr. Vale is searching for you. His men came back after you left. Madam refused to tell them anything. I suspect they will find you soon. I don't know him. No, but I knew your mother. Clara went still. Mrs. Finch reached into her coat and removed a small envelope, worn soft at the edges. I should have given you this years ago. Clara took it with shaking hands. On the front, in delicate handwriting, was her name. Clara. My mother wrote this. Mrs. Finch nodded. Before she died, she knew she was ill. She asked your father to keep it safe. After he passed, Madam found it. I saved it from the fire. Why didn't you give it to me? The question was not angry. That made it worse. Mrs. Finch's eyes shone. Because I was afraid. I needed my position. My son was sick then. Madam knew everyone's weakness. She always did. Clara looked at the envelope. Part of her wanted to tear it open immediately. Another part was afraid the paper might turn to dust and take her mother's voice with it. What does it say? I never read it. Clara slipped it into her dress pocket, close to her heart. Mrs. Finch gripped her hand. There is something else. Madam has papers in the blue study, your father's papers, your mother's papers. She told Mr. Vale they were gone, but they are not. I have dusted around that drawer for 10 years. The locked drawer. Yes, I knew it. Mrs. Finch almost smiled. Of course you did. You see more than people think. A carriage slowed near the curb. Both women stiffened, but it passed. You must go to the old chapel on Briar Lane, Mrs. Finch said. The sisters there take in women who need shelter. Ask for Sister Agnes. Give her my name. Come with me. Mrs. Finch shook her head. I will go to my sister. But you, Clara Hale, must decide who you are when no one is dressing you up or cutting you down. Clara held the bundle tightly. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. What if Maribel is right? Mrs. Finch stood, then prove her wrong one small thing at a time. The old chapel on Briar Lane had a red door and ivy creeping up its stones. Sister Agnes was short, round and brisk, with eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at Clara's wet hair, expensive torn dress, an empty carpet bag, and said, Rich trouble or poor trouble? Clara blinked. What? Rich trouble wears silk in the rain. Poor trouble wears holes in the rain. Either way, tea helps. By midnight, Clara sat in a narrow bed in a clean dormitory, wearing the plain wool dress Mrs. Finch had brought. Around her, other women slept quietly. Some were old, some were young, some had children curled against them. Clara opened her mother's letter by candlelight. My dearest Clara, if you are reading this, then I could not stay as long as I prayed I would. There is so much I wanted to tell you myself. First, you are loved, not because you are useful, beautiful, clever, obedient, or easy to care for. You are loved because you are mine. My name before I married your father was Elena Vale. I left my family in anger, but not because I stopped loving them. Pride is a lonely house, my darling. Do not build one. Your uncle Nathaniel is a good man. If life becomes hard, find him, show him the locket. He will know you. There are people who will try to make you small because they are afraid of what you might become. Do not hate them, but do not hand them the scissors. Learn, ask questions, work with your hands. Trust kindness that tells the truth, not kindness that keeps you weak. Your father loves you more than breath. If he seems worried, it is because he knows I leave behind a story unfinished. One day, I hope you will finish it with courage. All my love, always. Mama. Clara read it once. Then again. Then a third time, with tears slipping silently down her face. The next morning, Nathaniel Vale found her at the chapel. He did not arrive with a parade of lawyers or servants. He came alone, holding his hat in both hands like a man entering church, not a billionaire entering a shelter. Sister Agnes led him to the small garden where Clara was helping peel potatoes for lunch. His eyes went to the knife in her hand, then the basket, then her face. "You are working," he said. Clara almost laughed, badly. "But working." "Yes." He sat on the bench across from her. "Lily barely slept. She wanted to come, but I thought it best to speak with you first." "How did you find me?" "Mrs. Finch sent word to my office." Clara nodded. "She lost her position because of me." "Then she will have another by evening, if she wants one." Clara studied him. His coat was expensive but damp at the shoulders. He looked tired, not impatient, not annoyed that she had made him search. "Did you know my mother?" she asked. His face softened. "Yes." "Tell me." So he did. Elena Vale had been the youngest child of a proud family. Their father, Lionel Vale, built the first fortune with iron and shipping, then expected his children to obey as if they were employees. Nathaniel obeyed for years. Elena did not. She wanted to paint, teach, travel, and marry for love. When she met Thomas Hale, a school teacher with ink on his fingers and more ideals than money, Lionel forbade the match. Elena left anyway. "I was angry with her," Nathaniel admitted. "Not because she married your father, because she left without trusting me to stand beside her. Then our father fell ill, the business nearly collapsed, and by the time I searched properly, she had moved twice. I found your father's name. I wrote, no answer." "Maribel burned the letters," Clara said. Nathaniel closed his eyes briefly. "I suspected. My mother told me to find you." She showed him the letter. He read it with hands that trembled only once, at the signature. "I should have found you sooner," he said. Clara looked down at the half-peeled potato. "Everyone says that after something is broken." "Yes," he said quietly, "and sometimes saying it is not enough. So I will say this instead. I am here now, and you may decide what help you accept." That surprised her. Maribel's help had always arrived, like a command-wearing perfume. "What happens if I am Elena's daughter?" Clara asked. "You are Elena's daughter." "But legally?" "Legally we prove it. Birth records, marriage records, testimony, perhaps blood testing if needed. Your father's documents will help. Your mother's letter helps. The locket helps. Mrs. Finch helps. The truth helps most of all." "And if Maribel refuses?" Nathaniel's eyes cooled. "Then she refuses in front of people who can compel answers." Clara should have felt relieved. Instead, dread settled in her stomach. "She will say I'm useless." "What do you say?" Clara looked toward the chapel kitchen, where Sister Agnes was scolding someone for wasting onion skins. "I say I don't know everything I should." "No one does. She kept me from school." "Then you can study." "She kept me from work." "Then you can learn." "She made everyone think I was spoiled." Nathaniel leaned forward. "Clara, being harmed by comfort is confusing because the cage is pretty. People see the velvet and miss the lock, but a locked room is still a locked room. For the first time since leaving Rose Hill, Clara felt something loosen inside her. "I don't want to be carried into another mansion," she said. "I am not asking to carry you." "What are you asking?" "To walk beside you, if you allow it." Clara looked at her mother's letter. "Do not hand them the scissors." She folded it carefully. "I need to get the papers from the blue study." Nathaniel nodded. "Then we will." But returning to Rose Hill was not simple. By noon, Maribel had already acted. She sent a statement to 3 society papers claiming Clara had suffered a nervous episode after the accident and had run away under the influence of strangers. She suggested Nathaniel Vale, overwhelmed with gratitude because Clara saved his daughter, had been deceived by a troubled girl's fantasies. By evening, people were whispering again. "Poor Clara. Unstable Clara. Spoiled, useless, confused Clara." Maribel's genius had always been this. She did not need to destroy Clara in private if she could define her in public. Nathaniel's lawyers advised patience. Sister Agnes advised soup. Mrs. Finch advised breaking a window, though she quickly admitted that was not Christian and probably unwise. Clara chose a 4th option. "Invite Maribel to speak," she told Nathaniel. He frowned. "Where?" "At the charity gala. The one she is hosting tomorrow." "Yes." Maribel's annual gala was the pride of Rosehill Avenue. Wealthy donors came to praise her generosity, eat delicate food, and pledge money to causes they sometimes forgot by morning. This year's event benefited the Rosehill Girls Academy Fund, a project Maribel had promoted endlessly. A fund for girls' education. The irony was so sharp Clara almost smiled. "She will not let you in," Nathaniel said. "She will let you in." "Certainly. And if Lily asks to thank me publicly." Nathaniel's brows lifted. Clara felt a blush rise. "Is that wrong?" "It is strategic. I learned by watching Maribel." "Then let us make better use of the lesson." The next evening, Rosehill Mansion blazed with light. Carriages lined the avenue. Music drifted through the open windows. Women in jeweled gowns crossed the marble hall where Clara had stood with an empty carpet bag less than 2 days earlier. This time, Clara arrived in a plain navy dress borrowed from Sister Agnes's donation room. It fit well enough. Her hair was brushed back simply. The crescent locket rested openly at her throat. Nathaniel walked beside her. Lily held her hand. The footman at the door hesitated only a second before Nathaniel's gaze convinced him that hesitation was unhealthy. Inside, conversations faltered. Clara felt the weight of every stare. There she is. The runaway. The burden. The girl who saved the billionaire's daughter. Maribel stood near the grand staircase in a silver gown, receiving guests. Vivienne was beside her, beautiful and pale. When Maribel saw Clara, her smile froze. Nathaniel bowed politely. "Mrs. Hale, thank you for welcoming us." "I was not aware I had," Maribel said. Lily stepped forward before anyone could stop her. "I asked Papa to bring Clara so I could thank her." Several guests turned with interest. A child's gratitude was difficult to refuse in public. Maribel's smile returned, brittle as thin ice. "How sweet." Lily looked at the crowd and lifted her chin. "Clara ran into the road to save me. She was very brave. I think everyone should know." Applause began softly, then grew. Clara's cheeks burned. She did not feel brave standing in that hall. Running into the road had been easier. There had been no time to be afraid. Maribel clapped too, each movement precise. "How touching," she said. "Now perhaps Clara should rest. Excitement is not good for her." Clara heard the old spell in those words. Fragile. Weak. Useless. She drew a breath. "I do not need to rest." The room quieted. Maribel's eyes narrowed. Clara's voice shook at first, then steadied. I would like to say something. Nathaniel did not interrupt. He simply stood beside her. Maribel laughed lightly. This is hardly the time. It is a gala for girls' education, Clara said. I think it is exactly the time. A murmur passed through the guests. Vivienne looked at her mother. Something like worry crossed her face. Clara turned toward the room. For years, Mrs. Hale told people I was too delicate to study, too sensitive to attend school, too foolish to manage practical matters. Many of you believed her. I almost believed her too. Clara, Maribel warned. But 2 days ago, I learned that my mother's family had been trying to reach me for years. Letters came to this house. I never received them. Maribel's face flushed. That is a lie. Clara reached into her pocket and removed her mother's letter. My mother's name was Elena Vale. This is her letter to me. She told me to find my uncle Nathaniel. Gasps rippled through the hall. Nathaniel spoke then. I can confirm that Elena Vale was my sister. I can also confirm that I sent letters to this house repeatedly. None were answered. Maribel stepped down from the stair. This is outrageous. You cannot invade my home and accuse me before my guests. A voice from the side said, but you can accuse Clara before the newspapers. Everyone turned. Mrs. Finch stood near the dining room doors in a borrowed black dress, her chin high. Beside her stood Peter from the stables, holding a small brass key. Maribel looked genuinely shocked. How did you get in? Mrs. Finch smiled. Front door, new footman doesn't know who's dismissed. A few guests hid smiles. Peter stepped forward, nervous but determined. This opens the blue study drawer. Maribel went white. Clara stared. Peter. He swallowed. Your father gave my father a spare key years ago when he was doing repairs. My father kept it. Mrs. Finch remembered. Nathaniel's lawyer, Mr. Abrams, emerged from the crowd. Clara had not noticed him arrive. He was a compact man with round spectacles and the calm expression of someone who enjoyed paperwork more than gossip. Mrs. Hale, he said, given the serious questions raised regarding Miss Hale's identity and guardianship, I advise preserving all documents. You advise, Maribel snapped, in my house. For now, he said. Those 2 words changed the temperature of the room. For now. Maribel heard it, so did Clara. The guests began whispering faster. Maribel looked at the staircase, then the front door, calculating. Clara suddenly understood that every sweet word Maribel had ever spoken had been part of a calculation. Every cake, every dress, every dismissed tutor, it had all been arithmetic. But Clara had learned arithmetic too. Open the drawer, Clara said. Maribel laughed. You have no authority. No, Clara said, but Mr. Vale has witnesses. Mr. Abrams has legal standing, and you have guests who will wonder why a generous supporter of girls' education is afraid of papers. Silence. For 1 second, Clara saw pure hatred in Maribel's eyes. Then Maribel smiled. Very well, she said, let us satisfy this little drama. They moved as a strange procession to the blue study. Maribel, Nathaniel, Clara, Mr. Abrams, Mrs. Finch, Peter, Vivienne, Lily, and enough important guests to ensure the truth would not be easily buried. The study smelled of leather and cold ash. The locked drawer sat in Thomas Hale's old desk. Peter handed the key to Clara. Her fingers shook as she inserted it. The lock turned. Inside were bundles of letters tied with black ribbon, legal documents, a birth certificate, a marriage certificate, bank papers, a small sketch of baby Clara in her mother's arms. Nathaniel made a sound that was almost grief. Mr. Abrams sorted through the papers with careful speed. Elena Vale, he murmured, marriage to Thomas Hale, birth of Clara Elena Hale, correspondence from Nathaniel Vale, returned, no, opened. He lifted one envelope. The seal had been broken. Maribel said nothing. Clara picked up the sketch. On the bottom, in her father's handwriting, were the words, "My two brave girls." Brave. Not delicate. Not useless. Brave. Vivienne spoke suddenly. "Mother, did you know?" Maribel turned on her. "Be quiet." Vivienne flinched, and Clara recognized the movement. Different cage, maybe, but cage all the same. Mr. Abrams found another document and frowned. "This is a trust instrument." Nathaniel looked over his shoulder. "What trust?" Clara asked. Mr. Abrams adjusted his spectacles. "Your grandfather Lionel Vale established a private trust after Elena's departure. It appears to name any lawful child of Elena Vale as beneficiary upon proof of identity." Maribel's composure cracked. That old man hated Elena. Nathaniel's voice was cold. He regretted many things before he died. Mr. Abrams continued, "There are also payments issued for Clara's care, substantial payments." The room went utterly still. Clara looked at Maribel. "Payments." Nathaniel's face darkened. "My father's trustees must have located Thomas after Elena died. They could not force contact if Thomas refused, but they could provide for the child." "Thomas never refused," Mrs. Finch said quietly. "He wrote replies. I posted some myself before he died." Mr. Abrams lifted more papers. These payments continued after Mr. Hale's death. Mrs. Hale, as guardian, received them. Clara felt as if the floor had shifted. Maribel had not merely kept Nathaniel's letters away. She had accepted money meant for Clara, then convinced Clara she owed everything to Maribel's generosity. "Why?" Clara whispered. Maribel looked at her, and for once she did not bother pretending love. "Because money given to a child is wasted," she said. "Because your father was a fool, your mother was a disgrace, and you were a blank little thing who would have signed away anything if I waited long enough." Nathaniel stepped forward, but Clara raised a hand. She wanted to hear it, not because it did not hurt, but because truth, once spoken plainly, loses some of its power to haunt. "You spoiled me to weaken me," Clara said. Maribel's smile was thin. "I protected my household from chaos. You kept me ignorant. I kept you manageable." The words landed like a final stamp on a document. Manageable. That was what Maribel had wanted, not a daughter, not even a servant, a girl softened into surrender. Clara looked around the study, at Nathaniel's anger, at Lily's frightened loyalty, at Mrs. Finch's tears, at Peter's clenched fists, at Vivienne's stricken face, at the guests who now had no choice but to see what they had ignored because cruelty in silk is still easier to admire than suffering in plain clothes. Then Clara looked at Maribel. "I was manageable," she said, "but I am not yours to manage anymore." Maribel's lips parted. No answer came. The legal consequences did not unfold in one dramatic sweep. Real justice, Clara discovered, involved ink, waiting rooms, sworn statements, signatures, and people saying these matters take time, until she wanted to scream into a cushion. But the world changed quickly in smaller ways. The newspapers that had called Clara unstable now called her brave. Some did it sincerely. Some did it because Nathaniel Vale's lawyers encouraged accuracy with terrifying politeness. Mrs. Finch accepted a position managing one of Nathaniel's smaller homes, though she insisted on Sundays off and no polished nonsense. Peter received a scholarship to finish school, after Clara told Nathaniel he had been her first real teacher. Vivienne left Rosehill within a week. She came to see Clara at Nathaniel's home on a bright morning when Lily was teaching Clara to play a card game and cheating very badly. Vivienne stood in the doorway, no longer dressed like a portrait. Her eyes were red. "I didn't know all of it," she said. Clara placed her cards face down. "I know. I knew she was unkind. I knew she mocked you. I told myself it wasn't my business." Clara did not rush to comfort her. That was another thing she was learning. Forgiveness offered too quickly could become another form of silence. Vivienne twisted her gloves. "I'm sorry." Lily looked between them, sensing the importance of the moment. Clara said, "What will you do now?" Vivienne blinked. "What?" "You're sorry, what will you do?" The question seemed to unsettle her more than anger would have. "I don't know," Vivienne admitted. "Then find out." Vivienne nodded slowly. "I want to testify if I'm asked." "You may be. I'll tell the truth." "Good." There was a pause. Then Vivienne said, "You look different." Clara glanced down at her simple morning dress, less expensive, less afraid. Clara thought about that after Vivienne left. She was still afraid often, afraid of courtrooms, afraid of tutors discovering how many gaps hid in her education, afraid of accepting kindness, afraid of waking one day to find this new life was another trick. But fear no longer ruled every room she entered. Nathaniel hired tutors, but Clara chose the subjects: reading, mathematics, law basics, business writing, history. She stumbled often. At 17, she was learning things other girls had learned at 10. Some days humiliation burned hotter than determination. On those days, Nathaniel reminded her, late is not the same as never. Lily had her own method. Whenever Clara got frustrated, Lily would say, "You saved me before you knew fractions properly, so fractions cannot be that powerful." It was impossible not to laugh. Clara grew close to Lily in a way that surprised them both. The child followed her everywhere, asking questions with the boldness only loved children have. "Were you very lonely at Rosehill?" "Yes." "Did you have cake?" "Too much." "Can cake be bad?" "Anything can be bad if someone uses it to keep you quiet." Lily considered this seriously, even pudding. "Especially pudding." Nathaniel watched these conversations with a sadness Clara understood. He had found his sister's child, but not his sister. He had recovered a piece of the past, but not the years. One evening, Clara found him in his study holding Elena's letter. "She would have liked you," he said. Clara smiled faintly. "I hope so." "She was stubborn. I've heard. She would be angry with me. For not finding me. For many things." He folded the letter carefully. "But I think she would forgive me if she saw you now." Clara looked at the shelves of books, the warm lamps, the rain tapping gently at the windows. "I'm still angry sometimes. At Maribel. At everyone, her, you, my father for dying, my mother for leaving only a letter, myself for believing I was helpless." Nathaniel nodded. "Anger can be honest, just don't let it become your only language." That sounded like something Elena might have written. As months passed, the case against Maribel became clearer. She had misused trust payments, hidden correspondence, lied about Clara's education, attempted to isolate her from living relatives. The court removed all authority she had over Clara and ordered a full accounting of the funds. Rosehill Mansion, tangled in debts Maribel had disguised for years, was eventually seized as part of the settlement. Maribel fought bitterly, then publicly, then desperately. She claimed betrayal. She claimed confusion. She claimed she had only wanted to protect Clara from greedy relatives. But documents are patient enemies. They do not shout, they wait. In the end, Maribel lost Rosehill. The day Clara returned to the mansion as its legal owner, the sky was clear. She stood outside the golden doors with Nathaniel, Lily, Mrs. Finch, Peter, Sister Agnes and Vivienne. The house looked smaller than it had in memory, still grand, still beautiful, but no longer magical, no longer monstrous. Just a house. Maribel waited in the front hall, dressed in black. She was allowed to collect personal belongings under supervision. Her face was composed, but her eyes burned. "So," she said when Clara entered, "the poor girl gets her palace." Clara looked at the marble floor, where rainwater had once pooled around her shoes. No, she said, the poor girl gets to decide what the palace is for. Maribel laughed. And what will you do? Fill it with orphans, teach them arithmetic badly. Clara did not flinch. Yes, she said. Maribel's smile faded. Girls will study here, Clara continued. Girls who have been told they are too poor, too fragile, too plain, too pretty, too difficult, too late, too much, or not enough. They will learn accounts in the dining room, law in the blue study, music in the parlor, gardening outside. They will learn to cook and to argue and to repair things. They will learn that comfort is not the same as love, and obedience is not the same as goodness. Mrs. Finch sniffed loudly behind her. Lily whispered, and pudding. Clara smiled, and pudding freely chosen. Maribel stared, as if Clara had struck her. You think this makes you noble? No, Clara said, I think it makes the house useful. The word hung between them. Useful. For years Maribel had tried to make Clara useless. Now Clara would turn Maribel's own monument into a place where usefulness meant not servitude, but strength. Maribel stepped closer. You would be nothing without me. Clara considered that. Once the words would have crushed her, now they sounded tired. I am not nothing, she said, and whatever I become next will not belong to you. Maribel's face twisted, but there was nowhere for her anger to go, not into Clara, not anymore. She left Rosehill before noon. Clara watched from the doorway as the carriage carried her down the avenue. She expected triumph. Instead, she felt something quieter, not pity exactly, not forgiveness, just the strange emptiness that comes when a storm finally passes and leaves you standing in the damage. Nathaniel came beside her. Are you all right? Clara touched the crescent locket. I think so. You do not have to know today. That became one of the kindest sentences Clara knew. You do not have to know today. The Rosehill School for Girls opened the following spring. At first, there were 12 students. The youngest was 9 and refused to speak above a whisper. The oldest was 19 and had been told she was too old to begin again. Some came from shelters, some from households where they were ignored, some from families who loved them but could not afford schooling. Sister Agnes recommended half of them and inspected the kitchen twice a week, as if soup quality were a moral issue. Clara was not the headmistress. She knew better than that. She hired a brilliant woman named Miss Amara Bell, who had run a school overseas and had no patience for decorative ignorance. You will study with the younger girls when needed, Miss Bell told Clara during their first meeting. Clara blushed as a student, as a person who wishes to learn. But I own the building. Miss Bell shrugged. Buildings do not pass examinations. Nathaniel laughed for a full minute when Clara told him. So Clara became both founder and student. She sat at desks beside girls half her age and learned fractions thoroughly at last. She wrote essays, balanced ledgers, planted beans, mended torn hems, and gave speeches with shaking hands until they shook less. Whenever shame rose, she looked at the younger girls watching her. If she hid from embarrassment, they might too. So she made mistakes openly. I do not understand, she would say. Please explain that again. I was taught wrongly. I am learning now. Those became powerful words at Rosehill. Learning now. Lily visited often and appointed herself official pudding inspector. Peter taught evening arithmetic before leaving for university. Mrs. Finch ran the household with a firmness that made even Miss Bell respectful. Vivienne, true to her word, testified during the hearings and later volunteered to teach correspondence and etiquette. The first time Vivienne stood before a class, she looked terrified. A girl in the front row asked, "Is etiquette just pretending to be better than people?" Vivienne opened her mouth, closed it, then smiled. Sometimes we shall avoid that kind. Clara, watching from the doorway, laughed softly. Years did not heal everything neatly. Clara still had days when a compliment made her suspicious. She still disliked locked drawers. She still sometimes ate cake too quickly, then pushed the plate away with a complicated sadness. She still woke from dreams in which she stood at Rosehill's doors with an empty carpet bag while everyone applauded Maribel. But she also had mornings when sunlight filled the classroom and a girl solved a problem on the board, turning with surprise at her own intelligence. She had afternoons in the garden, dirt under her fingernails, Lily chattering beside her. She had evenings in Nathaniel's study, reading her mother's favorite poems aloud while he listened with eyes closed. She had choices. That, Clara decided, was what Maribel had stolen most. Not education, not money, not letters. Joys. So Clara built the school around giving it back. On the first anniversary of the storm, Rosehill held a small ceremony, not a grand gala with silver gowns and false smiles, but a gathering in the garden. The girls hung paper lanterns from the trees. Mrs. Finch made enough food for twice the number invited. Sister Agnes declared the lemonade too sweet, then drank 3 glasses. Nathaniel stood with Lily near the rose arbor, while Clara stepped onto a low platform. She wore a simple white dress and her mother's locket. In her hands, she held the old carpet bag. The girls had seen it before. Clara kept it in her office, not as a shrine to suffering, but as a reminder. This bag was empty when it was handed to me, Clara said. At the time, I thought that meant I had nothing, no home, no skills, no place, no future. The garden quieted. But an empty bag can also mean space, space to choose what you carry next. She opened it. From inside, she took out a book. I chose learning. Then a small trowel. Work. Then a wooden spoon. Care. Then a key. Truth. Then a folded copy of her mother's letter. Love that does not make you smaller. Lily, unable to help herself, whispered loudly, and pudding. The girls burst into laughter. Clara laughed too, and pudding. She looked at the faces before her, some hopeful, some skeptical, some still guarded. She loved them all, not softly but fiercely. People may call you useless when they have not taken the time to know what you can do. They may call you spoiled when they do not understand how control can hide inside gifts. They may call you difficult when you begin asking questions. Let them talk, then keep learning. Her gaze moved to Nathaniel. He smiled, and in his face she saw her mother's eyes. Clara continued, I used to think bravery was running into a road during a storm. Sometimes it is. But sometimes bravery is opening a book when you are ashamed, asking for help when you expect rejection, leaving a house that has taught you to fear the world, returning to that house and making it a school. The applause came gently at first, then warmly. Clara stepped down. Lily ran to hug her, nearly knocking the carpet bag from her hand. You forgot one thing, Lily said. What? You chose family. Clara looked over Lily's head at Nathaniel, Mrs. Finch, Peter, Vivienne, Sister Agnes, Miss Bell, and the girls of Rosehill. Family, she had learned, was not always the people who claimed ownership of you. Sometimes it was the people who handed you back to yourself. Yes, Clara said, hugging Lily close, I chose family too. That evening, after the guests left, and the lanterns swayed in the soft wind, Clara walked alone to the blue study. The room had changed. The heavy curtains were gone. The walls were painted a lighter color. The locked drawer had been repaired, but Clara never locked it. Inside were copies of important records, available whenever needed. On the desk sat a framed sketch, Elena holding baby Clara. My 2 brave girls. Clara touched the frame. I'm learning, Mama, she whispered. Outside, laughter drifted from the kitchen. Lily was probably stealing leftover pudding. Mrs. Finch was probably pretending not to notice. Nathaniel was probably pretending he had not helped. Clara smiled. Once, Rosehill had been a mansion full of soft traps. Now it was noisy, imperfect, useful, alive. And Clara, the poor girl Maribel had spoiled to make useless, finally understood the truth. She had never been useless. She had been unfinished. And now, at last, she held the pen.